Article 1, Section 9 and 10. Section 9, limits on Congress. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation, not exceeding $10 for each person. The subject of this sentence is imported slaves, and Congress is prohibited from prohibiting importing slaves. This is what I call the slave trade compromise. When the Constitutional Convention met, their goal was to set up a new government. And so they compromised on some of these issues that we look back on with perhaps disdain, even disgust, that we would acknowledge and allow for the slave trade to continue, but their goal at the time was to get the Constitution set up and to fix some of these things later. Goes on to say, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when, in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. So the writ of habeas corpus allows a person to challenge their imprisonment in court, preventing the executive authority from locking people up without reason or without probable cause. Habeas corpus has been suspended. It can be suspended during rebellion or invasion in order to keep the public safe. For example, during the Civil War, habeas corpus was suspended, and in 1871 to combat the Ku Klux Klan. To continue, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. A bill of attainder is a law directed against a specific person, making them automatically guilty without due process. For example, Jews wearing stars in Nazi Germany, guilty of being Jewish, automatically guilty without due process. Obviously something that is left over from the monarchical period, where the framers of the Constitution did not want the Congress to be stepping into the role of the executive or judicial branch. So they can't pass laws making people guilty, still require due process. Ex post facto laws are criminal laws that make an action illegal after someone has already done it. So, for example, if you are taking Tylenol and then the Congress would pass a law stating that Tylenol usage without a prescription is illegal, they could not go back to this time when it was legal and charge you for the crime after it's illegal. Prohibition would be another example, that people were drinking alcohol, then it was prohibited, that the police couldn't go and get people for drinking alcohol while it was still permitted, or even producing it. Technically, you could even still drink it during Prohibition. More on that later. By preventing excessive entanglements of Congress in the trial process, the founders were creating and establishing a principle of separation of powers, that the legislature should not be involved in the judicial branch. Goes on to say, no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. This is a capitation tax on individual people, and it was clarified and adjusted by the 16th Amendment in 1913 by the income tax. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. So this is generally setting up a principle of economic equality among the states, that some states couldn't have lower tariffs and attract more imports than others. No money shall be drawn from the treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time, So a law must be signed in order to use government money, though it seems that what they do now is just pass an amount to a certain department for them to be able to use, as the government has grown too large for Congress to be able to pass every single expenditure. The final power denied to the Congress is that no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. So, by outlawing titles of nobility, the founders are saying that everyone in the United States is equal. Technically, in a broad historical standpoint, we are all peasants. If we're not noble, we're some pretty awesome peasants, though. Also, no officer can receive gifts from other foreign countries. You see this most clearly in the presidents. They'll receive very fancy items from other nations, but in an attempt to reduce bribery and entanglements and other conflicts of interest, the Congress will take those gifts. They'll allow the presidents to put them into their presidential libraries. So we don't want people in our government to be receiving gifts that may make them, or even payments or salaries from any other institution that could divide their loyalties, as they are supposed to be representing the best interest of the people, defending the Constitution, and not their own self-interests. Section 10 is powers prohibited of the states. That no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, expost facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant titles of nobility. Some of those are reserved for Congress, letters of marque, reprisal, entering into treaties. States cannot coin money, but the Congress can. And some of them are things that no level of government can do. Bill of attainder, ex post facto laws, titles of nobility. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports, except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws. And the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of the Congress. And no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with any other state, or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. So they don't want states entering into war, because if one state goes to war, they're essentially declaring war that the rest of the states may not agree to. And so only Congress has the ability to declare war. If a state is invaded, however, they are permitted to repel the invasion, as all of the other states would come to their assistance. All of this is meant to keep the states unified, which was one of the problems with the Confederation and the weak central government.